And we are live. Right on. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Wolf. It's good to see everybody in here. Happy Wednesday. I'm really excited to be joined with myself, Natalie Brunell, going over from Coin Stories and the whole world of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a world that I probably in the last year or so, I came from like the whole crypto world, started in NFTs, super decent land. And then slowly over, we host all these Bitcoin spaces, was sort of brought over to being a lot more orange pilled. And so your conversations have been amazing, like I was telling you just a second ago. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and happy to have you over on the Bitcoin side.
Yes, definitely. And now the Bitcoin conference is coming up. They're announcing all sorts of speakers. I know for a fact you're going to be there, but is there anyone specifically that you're excited to see or any conversations you're excited to have while you're there?
Oh, I love this conference. I mean, I launched my career at this conference, and it just has energy unlike no other event. They're expecting more than 30,000 people. Obviously, all of the big political names are coming back because this administration has really embraced Bitcoin, and that changed everything last year. I mean, if you would have told me that candidates for president of the United States were going to be at this conference talking about how much they love Bitcoin, I wouldn't have believed you. But just also so many of the prominent names that really helped build this space to what it is, like the Adam Backs and Trace Mayer is going to be on the panel that I'm moderating, and I've always wanted to meet him. Peter Schiff is on that panel, which will be funny because I'm going to hit him pretty hard with his gold love and his Bitcoin hate. And honestly, it's just so fun to be in person with everyone and meet people from all over the world who love Bitcoin. So I can't wait. I'm hosting my 4th annual Women of Bitcoin brunch. We're going to have 500 women there this year, which is pretty historic. So I just can't wait all around.
Super cool. Yeah, I'm very excited. We'll definitely be there with the whole Wolf team. And you mentioned that was kind of like what kicked off your career. I know you had a background in communications. You've done some hosting before as well. I guess like a two-pronged question. Like, did you ever think you'd fall into this journey of being Bitcoin host, going all in on Bitcoin? And I also would love to hear a bit of like the origin story for Coin Stories show.
I sort of stumbled into my dream job. I was a journalist for about 10 plus years on the TV side. And I mean, I enjoyed that career very much because I was always someone who really loved to learn. And one of the reasons why I pursued journalism, especially investigative journalism, is I wanted to hold the powerful accountable. And I just thought, what a noble profession. You get to, as you ascend your career, travel the world, constantly meet new people, do these fascinating sit downs. And of course, it looks more glamorous than it is. TV actually is very tough because you get sent out to some of the most tragic stories. And I covered so many mass shootings and natural disasters. And it's like a very physically trying job. But what I always loved the most is interviews, especially long form interviews. And as you work in television, you don't really get to do long form interviews as much as you'd like to. Or if you do it, you can only air a tiny slice of it, because my story limit was always about 90 seconds or 2 minutes if I was lucky. Wow. So you can probably imagine, I mean, a lot gets left on the cutting room floor. And around the I would say the 2015 year, I just was listening to a lot of podcasts, and that was sort of my outlet for at least listening to long form interviews. And I thought, gosh, I wish I could do this more. And I loved the medium and I loved the podcast hosts I was listening to. So I thought, what if I just went out on my own and started a podcast? And I started a hobby show while I was a news reporter, and it was very much just a passion project. And at the time I was interviewing people that were successful about how they reached their levels of success, whether they were journalists or social media influencers, people within politics. I always loved backstories and biographies or autobiographies. And I loved rags to riches stories where people really overcame a lot to achieve success. And then I stumbled upon Bitcoin, and Bitcoin fascinated me because I was like so many people probably in your audience where I recognized the problem. I talked about it all day in my job. I reported on all the symptoms, and people were frustrated, and cost of living's going up, and no one can afford college tuition or retirement. And people are getting, they're fighting amongst each other, and everyone's become so political. but I never thought to dig into the true cause, which I now know is our broken monetary system and the broken incentives within it. And so Bitcoin was this incredible learning journey for me, where once I discovered it and put the dots together and realized this is actually the cause of what so many of us are fighting about, and we really need to address and fix the money. And from it, all the problems that stem from it will slowly, I think, get resolved on their own. That really inspired me. And so I thought, well, encouraged by a mentor, I thought, why not talk to some of the Bitcoiners about their lives and why they found Bitcoin and found they have such conviction in this technology. And so that was sort of the origin story of the show. And it was always going to be just a hobby on the side while I was a reporter. And the fact that I get to do this full time now is just such an honor. And I feel an obligation and a duty to do the best job possible to help educate people about Bitcoin.
Okay, that is really cool. I also, came from the podcasting, like back in, this must have been during right before COVID / in COVID, and had a little bit of extra time on my hands. And so I was already consuming lots of podcasts, trying to get better. And I started seeing these podcast shows popping up, like Impulsive, where they would bring on guests and they would have this whole entire show. And I was like, how does someone get on one of these shows? Do you have to I guess I have to accomplish something. Like, I'm just in college, like my resume was rather empty. It's just like, went to college, played some soccer, goes to the gym. I was like, okay, there's not much going on there. I got to do something. Ended up turning into like this whole journey of like, okay, I'm going to go do a YouTube journey. I'm going to try and become like a travel vlogger. That didn't work. That led one thing after another, a long journey of living in my car. And eventually found my way into the crypto scene. So I was like, okay, cool. It looks like it can change your life. I should probably be learning to invest in stuff. That's some really cool people. And, I'm sure that I've seen one of your podcasts before I knew who you were, like relevant to the Bitcoin world. Because like I said, like a year ago, I barely even realized that Bitcoin was there's like separate worlds here. Because like in crypto, Bitcoin is just the top crypto. But over here, there's a whole different conversation going on. And that has been a crazy journey for me. So that's a really cool conversation on your side of things. And along this journey, I'm curious if there's every period where your belief in Bitcoin was seriously doubted. And if that ever came up, and if so, how'd you deal with it? How'd you, go about that? Was it just talking to other people?
I mean, I wouldn't say my faith in Bitcoin was ever really tested. I just think that the process of learning about Bitcoin is really challenging, because you have to almost unlearn everything that you learned in school. We're not taught about our monetary system and how it really works. And if we are taught about it, we're taught about it in a way that honestly benefits central banking and the way that it's currently set up. So I think for me, it was just kind of getting over the hurdles of all the skepticism that anyone has when they first approach Bitcoin. And that's why I love Michael Saylor's quote of just everyone is against Bitcoin before they're for it, because naturally it's a new technology. It's sort of opposite to everything that you're used to. It's this paradigm shift that it really represents. And so you think, well, I mean, it's digital. So of course it can be replicated. Of course it can be hacked, right? I mean, you have to kind of go through a lot of studying to really appreciate the technology, the cryptography, the consensus mechanism, the proof of work, the mining, which is, I think, why there's so much fog and confusion about crypto at large. Because obviously you enter in and you're like, well, there's a lot of these. Of course, there's going to be another Bitcoin, or there are many Bitcoins. And you have to really kind of humble yourself and say, well, why are some people saying that that's actually not the case? And for me, that was truly the turnaround point. Was I was listening to people who I really respected in terms of their levels of knowledge, especially in the fields of computer science and engineering and mathematics and physics, and business and finance, saying, no, Bitcoin is special and Bitcoin's very different. And you need to look at it through a very, very different lens. And so I had to, I had to take that years-long journey. And as I grew in my knowledge, I grew in my conviction and my ability to invest more in it. Because when I first started out, of course, it's like, oh, I wouldn't want to put a significant portion of my portfolio in this because I could lose it. And that's very, very scary. But as you grow to learn about Bitcoin, I think your percentage or your net worth invested in Bitcoin is very much a reflection of how much you've studied it. So now, because I feel very comfortable, and of course, I'm always still learning, and Bitcoin's this fascinating ecosystem that there's always something new to explore in. But I feel very confident that this is the future. This is both a monetary network as well as an asset that I want the majority of what I have invested in. And I hope that everyone at least just gets off zero, because it's funny. I'm here, most of my money is in Bitcoin, and I just have cash for expenses and taxes and all of that. And then on the other side of the spectrum is people who haven't even gotten off, zero. And so how do we bridge that gap? And that's really what I'm focused on, is helping people learn in an approachable way.
Yeah, I will say, so at the beginning of the year, I was kind of like you were saying, that there's a clear, it's like a mental shift when you don't have you're starting to understand it, but you don't exactly have the money in that place where you're like, okay, this is that untouching, that hodl bag. And for me, that the beginning of that hodl bag did kind of fundamentally change the way I was thinking about things. And maybe it was the way I was going about it. And, I've been praying to also like understand money a bit deeper. And, like I said, I'm 26 years old. So kind of now just starting to think about longer term retirement type of thinking as far as investing. And I was like, okay, like what asset could I be comfortable with that would, last the test of time? And there was a Michael Saylor. He was on stage one time and he was talking about the timelessness of Bitcoin. He goes, who are you going to trust? You're going to trust the CEO of this company, the CEO of that company, like for this thing, he's like for 100 years, 200 years. He's like, well, can you? And I was just like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I could actually. And it did. It changed a lot of the way I thought about things, because I was like, okay, there's this asset now that I hold. It's something I would like to not ever touch, just to continue to grow the pie of. And also, it sort of helped structure me, I guess, and reordering, like you were mentioning. Bitcoin does these things almost like a divine way. It was like dropped, not to get all religious. I know you're Catholic, but like not to get all religious with Bitcoin. But when I was first getting in, I was like, this is such a philosophical concept. It feels too good to be true in many ways. But then the more you learn about Bitcoin, it just provides answers every single time. Like, I don't know if it's been the exact same journey for you, getting deeper into Bitcoin, but that's something I noticed in my first year.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have had sort of spiritual reawakenings with Bitcoin. And it is really beautiful to think about this immaculate conception that so many people recognize about Bitcoin, that it was created and it was sort of given away, and there was no profit motive. Because if you look at all the other things really in the crypto space at large, there are founders or foundations, and there's always a source of extracting value, right? Or profiting from whatever project or token or protocol was created. And Bitcoin, that didn't exist in Bitcoin. It just like organically spread. It was given to the world to embrace or not, or to completely reject. And it grew very slowly, node by node, and, computer by computer that was mining it. And so I think that there is something really amazing about the fact that that also was born out of, the white paper talked about these tragic flaws in our current system, because we have to rely on trust, and because we have to rely on central authorities that have consistently broken our trust and led to these financial bubbles. Like really recognizing the time that we were in, and maybe offering Bitcoin at this inflection point where where do we go from here? We're printing money into oblivion. The majority of people, the workers, the working class, is getting impoverished, and this is kind of the cycle that creates revolutions. And so it is kind of immaculate timing at the same time, which makes you wonder. And whether people are religious or not, what I really do love about Bitcoin is that energy component, because regardless of how you view the origins, right? Like everything does come down to energy. We're all energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed. It's just transferred. And Bitcoin is a currency built on energy, something that none of us can cheat or manipulate. There's something so truthful and powerful in it, because none of us can create this thing, this energy that we all rely on and that our life is made up of. And so that for me has also just been this like amazing thing that like, this represents something so much bigger than us, and it's tied to something of real finite measurable truth. And that's why I think it's so powerful and amazing. And like what I used to think was this kind of just niche corner of the world that I was involved in. No, actually Bitcoin touches everything, because money touches everything. And all of our interactions at the end of the day involve money in some way or another. All the things that we're, podcasting through, all this equipment, someone worked to put this together and collaborated around the world to put it together. And I just love that. I just think that it's amazing, and a world built on sound money that's based on energy. Like what kind of world can we create? I imagine it to be one of true abundance and prosperity in a way that we've never really experienced before.
Do you think, I love that. I love that take on the energy component as well. I had not thought about it like that. I've seen some rhetoric online on the state of the future And, a lot of people believe it's going to be very dystopian. Some people are in the camp of like a George Orwellian 1984, Big Brother, everyone's watching you, it's kind of dark and scary. And then Bitcoin is this autonomous vehicle to allow you to sort of move as you please kind of thing. And then other people are in the camp that we will just walk our way into that by pure distractions. I'm thinking social media, I'm thinking just brain rot, TikTok scrolling, doom scrolling that I've definitely done, things like that. And we just kind of walk ourselves into a world where it becomes very dystopian, and we kind of just do whatever the government decides what we want to do. The CBDCs come into play. We walk right into that too, because that's easier. I'm curious on your take on the future of this world. You sort of outlined a beautiful picture if we are built on sound money. So I guess my question to you is, like, do you see that kind of future coming in the midterm? And yeah, I guess that is sort of my question. Like, what is your take on the future of the world? Like, what do you think it's going to look like?
I mean, I have a very positive outlook on the future, and I think that was augmented by discovering Bitcoin. Because prior to Bitcoin, when I was focusing more on the problems in the system, I was one of the people who became very pessimistic and nervous about the future. I thought, how am I going to afford a family and a house and all these things that are getting more expensive? And the question that I wasn't asking is, why is everything getting more expensive, and why is the system, the way that it is? But now that we have Bitcoin as a tool, I'm very much of the belief system that Jeff Booth talks about publicly, which is that you create the world that you want to live in. And the more that you speak about something in a certain way, the more that becomes your reality. So if you dwell on the doom and gloom, and you say, and you orient your whole life that we're moving into a dystopian future, you at least personally you will see that reflected in your life. You will notice all the things that are dystopian. You will focus on the negative things that are happening rather than the things that are moving in a really good direction. I really believe that your mind, your attitude is really important, and creating a positive environment and a positive outlook very much defines what happens to you. And so I actually choose to focus on all the good that Bitcoin is going to create. I have met so many phenomenal people who are really focused on providing and giving and creating value. And that is what, to me, Bitcoin truly represents. And it's not like, oh my gosh, everything's going to be perfect. A meritocracy, which Bitcoin represents, it is full of chaos and competition, and things actually fail. I mean, today, so much is propped up that has no real value, but it's just inflated through this manipulated system of central banking and a manipulated currency, and really unit of account that skews prices across the whole board, and the rich become richer, the poor become poor. So I think that if we actually strike at the heart of that, which has so much corruption embedded in it, we can start to lay a foundation where all of us can contribute in a more meaningful way. I mean, a lot of people today, technology has empowered us to do so many more things than we were ever able to do. And if people actually felt like they could use their skills, use their minds, use their creativity, and innovate and take chances, we can build so many things that, have not existed in the past. But if people are in the mindset of, I have to just, soldier on and be, a cog in this corporate machine and pay my, 40 hours a week until I hopefully maybe retire, but I probably can't afford to retire, all of that sends us down a path of just, I think, continued sort of depression, and the inability to think big, and the inability to take chances, and the inability to really take care of ourselves and each other. Whereas a world where you have a store of value that actually protects your purchasing power and allows you to plan for the future and drop your time preference and really plan for the long term, that's the world that creates abundance. So I focus on that and how Bitcoin enables that. And yes, of course, obviously technology allows for more surveillance and all of that, but we're not just going to give up, right? I mean, there will always be freedom fighters. And I think that's what's so amazing about the Bitcoin community, is so many people that are speaking truth to power and putting a spotlight on these issues, and why everyone should really fight for freedom and free markets and all of that. And so I just think that the future is really bright because we have access to Bitcoin, and it will empower so many people globally. And no, it's not going to be like easy and just rainbows and unicorns. But I do think that this is our best chance in a world that is full of so much risk, so much uncertainty, so much control and authoritarianism. I think that this is the best tool that we have to sort of break that and increase freedom around the world.
I love that take. And I think that is a pretty solid way to sort of go about life, especially day to day, because you're right. It can be difficult, and finding out life can be longer. Things can take a little bit longer than, I maybe imagined on my timeline. I'm like, oh, I thought this was going to take a little bit. and then I would just get it. So kind of gets me thinking. So this mentality, do you think how much has Bitcoin sort of shaped this particular worldview? Like, have you always had this type of outlook on life, like in the high school, college, like when you're working through school, when you're working through that first job, or what has been your mentality kind of in this whole journey?
Well, I think for me, and I've talked about this before, Bitcoin has really restored hope and restored a sense of the American dream. So I feel like my life has been sort of this cycle, or maybe a full circle is really what it comes to with Bitcoin, because I started out when I was a child, like so many children, right? Children are full of hope, and there's this exuberant innocence where you think anything's possible, and the world is laid out before you, and you're ready to conquer it, right? I feel like we're also confident when we're young that we can like make anything possible. And I was lucky to have parents who said, the ticket is education, hard work, and you can make anything happen. And for them, that was really a representation of the American dream. They grew up with very little. They grew up under communism, where not a lot was possible, and social mobility was non-existent. And you basically, if you were born poor, you died poor. That was the reality. And they came to this country where you were judged by how hard you worked. And so that was like a truth, and that was a truth that was embedded for me when I was very young. But what was difficult, and the sort of turning point for me where things got really challenging, and my hero's journey, like the struggle, was that, wait, is this world actually the way that it is? Because my parents just lost everything in the great financial crisis. And I'm working harder and harder, but everything's getting more expensive faster than I can accumulate, my raises or accelerate in my career. What is happening? How do I get to that next level? Why is it so hard? What am I doing wrong? Like, you end up, I think a lot of us, we blame ourselves. We're like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not like this person? And social media allows you to compare yourself to literally everyone, right? And so that was a low point for me, where again, I started to lose hope, where I'm working super hard. I've played by all the rules. How do I get to that point where I have the American dream and the home and the family and all of that, and I don't feel so worried about all the financial aspects? And then Bitcoin, and discovering it and really learning about the system and empowering myself with that knowledge of this is actually how things work, that restored all my hope and made me feel like, I can plan for the future. It helped me both financially and just in every way, in terms of just like my physical and mental capabilities and awareness, and I think strength. And that's what I hope for other people. Like, that's why I feel called to the mission of educating people on Bitcoin, because I don't think that there's anything more empowering than feeling like you do have hope for the future. Like, you can make your dreams come true. Like, it is worth it to be the good person, to, work hard, because it's going to pay off in the end. Whereas so many people have felt like no matter what they do, they won't catch up, and the pressure's just mounting on them more and more. And that's not a society that I think, is sustainable. There's more and more friction that's caused, and we've seen it. We've all experienced it, and I've reported on it. So for me, it's just like Bitcoin does represent hope, and I think a lot of people just need hope. They need hope and economic empowerment. And I don't name one tool, that does better at achieving that for people. I can't find one.
I guess that makes sense. I imagine a lot of I would actually love to hear what a typical day in your life looks like. But, from the passion I'm hearing from your voice, I imagine it's a lot of conversations like this and getting as much of this content out there for people.
There is no typical day. And I guess, when I was a reporter, every day was different. I covered a different story, and I was sent out to so many places. So for Bitcoin, I think in a way it gave more stability, in the sense that I don't have to travel to all these crazy, disasters all over. It's much more positive, right? I'm talking to people every day about changing the world for the better, which has been really, really exciting. The only thing challenging about Bitcoin is truly just having to answer the same questions over and over again from the deniers, right? From the skeptics, because it's like the information is out there, but every time you have a conversation with someone that doubts, it's always the same. It's always the same thing. It's the same, but they don't know anything about it, but they're an expert, the quantum's going to break it. And, it can be hacked. There's going to be another one. The energy component. It's all the things where it's hard, because I would rather have a conversation with someone that's actually taken at least 10 hours, 20 hours to study Bitcoin, because then you don't feel like you're just talking to someone that's yelling at you from a place of just, I'm opposed to this just because. What I like is, okay, take the time to study it a little bit, have questions where you genuinely seem open to at least learning, right? And then let's talk about those things, because those are very fascinating conversations. And I remember having them. But I was always, I approached Bitcoin with open curiosity. I was never like, this just isn't going to work because it's just not going to work. You know, like I hate it because X. Those are the conversations that are difficult. And I try to meet people where they are. And I'm sure people that are viewing this, maybe they've had their own experiences, but like, you have to have an open mind. This is a new technology. Every time a new technology has come around, people, especially older generations, right, that have been embedded in a certain way of thinking or doing, are like, no, it's not going to be different. And yet, look, the internet, how much it changed our lives, and the telephone and airplanes and electricity. I mean, you could go back in time, right? Every time there's a paramount, like huge shift in technology, there are doubters and skeptics that are eventually proven wrong. And so I just ask people that, you know, have humility. That's why we say stay humble, stack sats. Like humility is really important, because otherwise you can miss out on literally the most asymmetric, amazing opportunity of your life.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, most definitely. You brought up your past, you know, traveling to some pretty crazy stuff and seeing some things that probably kind of rattled you a little bit. What are some things you learned from those years of experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was very challenging for sure. Because again, news trucks don't go to happy experiences. I mean, sure, when I was starting out, I covered, you know, some like county fairs and stuff like that, the fluff pieces. But for the most part, you're meeting people on the worst days of their lives. And so you learn a lot, because first of all, you have to kind of compartmentalize your natural human instincts of especially emotion, right? Like, I mean, you can't have a reporter come on the scene and start crying.
Right.
But you do, I mean, how do you not feel when you show up at the scene of, let's say, like a school where dozens of children have just been shot, which happened. I've covered that too many times, like that more than I can count. You know, natural disasters like floods, people have lost their homes, fires, things that are just, they're full of drama and they're full of violence and chaos. And you develop sort of a calm, you know, because you are an observer, and your duty is to bring the information as much as you could possibly gather and share it with the public in a calm way that they can understand. And so you learn to be very quick on your feet. You learn to compartmentalize the emotion and remain very, very calm so that you can take action, absorb the information, distill it, and report on it in a way that you can convey the message simply. And so I think it really helped me with just storytelling. I read this wonderful book when I was actually studying journalism called Aim for the Heart, which stuck with me to this day, because people will forget the details and you know, where it happened, what day it happened, the names of who it happened to, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And so I think that's for me, like when I talk about Bitcoin and I try to convey the message, I try to convey it in a way that really tugs on the heartstrings and the emotions of people that we can all relate to, because everyone can relate to struggle. Everyone can relate to triumph. Everyone can relate to what it feels like for, you know, someone to be oppressed, or for the underdog to finally, you know, come around and experience victory. These are things that make stories so compelling and amazing and memorable. And so that's what I try to remember. And it really just taught me to appreciate every story, and how unique each one is, even though the characters are different, but like the stories bring us together, and there's like a thread that connects all of them, which is what we feel, which is the human story, the human element. And so yeah, I've just been really grateful to be in the job that I've been doing. But Bitcoin has been the best story to tell, that's for sure.
That is the coolest. Well, I appreciate you sharing some of that. I can't imagine. I've never been in that scenario, so I was just genuinely curious on what an experience like that does. How long were you doing that, by the way?
I mean, I've been doing the same thing since college, which is crazy to think about. So I studied journalism in undergrad, and then I did journalism in grad school too. I have my
Okay.
master's, and then I've just been a TV reporter ever since, from small towns to national news. I've worked for massive. I started my career at CNN. Then I went to local markets. I went to ABC News National. I've been at Reuters. I've been at so many different places. So, it's been a long journey, and I'm grateful. It's funny because what I'm doing now is really the result of the revolution of decentralized media and information, and it's empowered people like me to become independent voices and content creators, which is something I never again like. There were always gatekeepers within the media world, and when I was growing up, you watched one of maybe a handful of channels, and and then like cable news came up, right? And then you had maybe a few more options, but you had to get a job with a massive institution and a massive
Yep.
network, and those were very lucrative positions. And now you have the Joe Rogans of the world. And, even people that were very big in terms of their TV careers have launched their own podcasts. And like Oprah has her own network,
That's
and,
right.
Megan Kelly's off on her own. And so the industry has transformed dramatically. And I think maybe that also opened me up to being more open-minded about technology, because it was changing before my eyes and we just had to adapt to it. I mean, when news started going on social media and people started to become their own reporters, sharing videos that news journalists would then use, like that's a revolutionary change that didn't exist before, where all of a sudden you have a million eyewitnesses potentially, and you have to kind of like go through and make sure it's accurate. And we're now reporting on our phones and live streaming to the audience, and we're on these different social media platforms. So the transition that I saw as quickly as it was happening in news, I think also made me a little bit like, okay, well, technology really changes things, and our money is a technology, and now Bitcoin is changing our money, and I should really be open-minded to like what this means and why it's happening.
I love that. Do you think anyone from like undergrad and graduate school has followed this journey and been like, holy smokes, like following you on Instagram? They're like, this girl has made it. She's out here with her own show now. Like, are there any of them doing the same kind of thing? Or have any of them entered the Bitcoin world or sort of like this own decentralized media game like you?
I get reached out to a lot by people who want to start their own podcasts, and I always try to help and encourage them. I mean, again, I didn't think that this was something that was possible, and I think anyone is capable of it. The only thing I always kind of recommend to people is find something that you can really focus on and become an expert, so to speak, on. Find something of focus so that you can separate yourself and market yourself, because today there are a million content creators talking about all sorts of things. And in order to be credible, I think you really need to understand whatever topic it is you're going to cover. And if you focus on one, it's going to be a little bit easier. It's going to be easier to get guests and really become someone that's knowledgeable on it, rather than like if you want to cover everything and be a jack of all trades, like that's good, but it's going to be more difficult, I think.
Yeah.
So if you focus in on something, and something that clearly there's demand for the information, like I see so many health content creators now, and I think that's such a cool area. I mean, people that really dive in, and some are specialists in like hormones, and some are specialists in, like nutrition, and those are fascinating videos that even I follow, and because I can tell that they're credible and authentic, and like how much work that they've put in. A lot of them maybe came from those types of backgrounds, and so for me, like my focus became Bitcoin. I was obsessed with it. It's all I wanted to do and research and investigate, and I put in the time and the work. And so hopefully, the people that come to me and have built out this audience, like they know that this is my passion, and I'm trying to get the most accurate, up-to-date information to everyone as possible. And so that's been my area of focus and growth. And so I think if people find that thing that really lights them up and makes them excited and relates to their skill set, like there's just an abundance of opportunity there. And I think that's really exciting.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. That's cool stuff for the podcasting world as well. I mean, it took me a while, but after I got like my first podcast under the belt, I remember I was like, okay, not bad. I didn't like that. Like that was kind of nice. I got some of my thoughts out of my brain a little bit, just like, the conversation you have with like a wall kind of thing. And then you put it out there, and kind of kicked off that whole journey. I think I have that video still somewhere on YouTube. The audio was terrible. I remember. Okay, so you mentioned like a couple of the other like the health shows and stuff. Are there any like what other interests do you have? And like, do you listen to any other podcast hosts? Like, what kind of stuff are you consuming besides Bitcoin stuff?
Well, I think because of my background being a news reporter, I consume a lot of news, and I'm someone who, and probably my husband gets a little annoyed by this. I like want to watch a little bit of everything. I want to watch a little bit of like the cable news. I want to watch both sides. Like, what is this side saying? The really conservative channel. What's the really liberal side saying? What is the one that says they're neutral saying? Like, I kind of switch between, and I've really always been that way. Like when I used to work in television news, I would watch the evening broadcast, like the main evening broadcast for all the standard like CBS, ABC, NBC. I watched all of them every night, and I would compare kind of the stories and how they were covered and how I was a student of my field, and I really wanted to understand. And so one thing is like, I think if you're passionate about something, you just consume as much as you can of it. So I consume a lot of news in general, and then specifically like Bitcoin and macro, like financial news, because I just want to know what's going on at all times. If we put that all aside, then I think my biggest passions would be like food and travel and health. I love looking at I love to cook. So I love watching cooking videos, and there's some cooking influencers I really enjoy watching. And I really love Italy. Like I fell in love with Italy when I was in college. I used to live there. I speak Italian. So anything related to Italy, like I can watch Italian shows and videos all day long. So yeah, like I have my hobbies and my side passions, but like it's fun because I get to do something that I'm just so genuinely interested in, and I could watch Bitcoin content all day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm very similar. Just consuming endless amounts of stuff. Just it's you actually put it perfectly. Like a student of the craft, like that is just what you're drawn toward. Like you see a video on YouTube, and you're like, oh, yeah.
Well, I think the more that you watch, the more that like the craft, and what people are doing, and the competition and all of that. I think that's important. I think also watching yourself and asking for others to give you critiques, because I had talent coaches throughout my career. I had people that helped me with my voice and with my storytelling, and I always sought out to get feedback. And I think that some people don't do that, right? And repetition is great because repetition just naturally helps you improve. The more you do something, you get better. But I think that that's accelerated. You improve at a faster rate if you also take your work and give it to someone that you admire, or that has more experience, or is a mentor, and you say, hey, what do you think about this? Where are areas that I can improve? And hopefully you have people that can give you kind of constructive guidance of, this was good, but like here's something you might want to try, or did you notice this about yourself? Like I think it's really good to seek out feedback and mentors, because we don't always see ourselves the way other people do.
Oh yeah.
It's funny because a lot of times we're our own worst critics, but then other things we might not even notice that someone else might, like, oh, did you mean to say it this way? Or did you know that this could be interpreted in a certain way? And so the more that you could become very aware of your performance in whatever you're doing, I mean, I think this applies to literally every industry. I think the better you become at your craft, and the more in tune you are with your customers or your clients or your audience. Like for me, I guess my customers like my audience.
Yeah. Okay, that was beautiful. That was some rock star advice right there. And I fully agree. Like there are many things where I'm hard on myself, but then other things I'll give myself a pass. And it's just not an accurate representation. I know we have to bounce soon. So I wanted to say I've loved talking to you. This is a really fun conversation. And I appreciate you kind of, hitting the ball back and forth with me a little bit. And for anyone who's watching, by the way, definitely give her a follow. If you're on X, it's right above our faces on the stream. You're on YouTube, it's down below in the description. You can give her a follow. But is there anything you wanted to like leave the audience with, or let people know about before we wrap that's got you coming up, or things you're excited about?
Yeah, I'm just excited for the Bitcoin conference. So for anyone that's going to be there, can't wait to meet you guys. There's tickets still available. I think the prices go up soon. So get your tickets, use code HODL for a discount. And then I'm really excited to launch my book this fall. I spent so much of last year writing a book called Bitcoin is for Everyone. It's the book that I really wish I had at the beginning of my journey. I basically brought together aspects of some of my favorite books. So there's a little bit, talking about the technical components of Bitcoin, but in a very approachable way, and mining and the energy and all that. there's the human rights element and like how this actually matters around the world and how it's empowering people. But the fundamental, like the beginning of it is, let's all just get on the same page with, we have a major problem and a lot of people are struggling and the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Let's dig into the question that not a lot of us ask ourselves, which is like, what is money? And why is our money losing purchasing power compared to everything that we want to buy? And then I kind of just go through that in a very, very gentle way. Like a very neutral way, that regardless of what your political views are, you can kind of sit down and read just like from a truly like neutral place what is wrong with our monetary system and why Bitcoin is a great solution for it. So I hope everyone, you can pre-order it. And it's available on all the places you get books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that. So I hope everyone pre-orders Bitcoin is for Everyone.
I will go ahead and track down that link and find it, put it down below on other platforms. I definitely would love to give that a read. And we'll have to get you back on the show at some point. Anytime, open invite for the spaces or the podcast. We'd love to have you back, Natalie. So thanks
for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Guys, have an amazing rest of your day. Catch you guys all in the next one at Wolf. Have a great day. Take care.